Welcome to the Town Council's Financial Oversight Committee meeting of Friday, July the 10th at 10:30 a.m. The meeting is being held at the media room at the Senior Center. Before I start the agenda, I have a statement to make concerning recent LCAT productions that were seen by the taxpayers. On June 29th, an East Long Meadow Town Committee meeting was held, during which several remarks were made about the Town Council's Financial Oversight Committee. Since the remarks and opinions were made in a public forum, I feel it is my duty as chair of this committee to respond to accusations about the process that are not true. These are the facts. We are a committee rightfully appointed by the Town Council. Jim Broderick and I are unpaid volunteers on this committee. Pro bono, as the lawyers say. We both came to this committee with extensive municipal and financial experience. The other three members serve by providing their own areas of municipal expertise. As chair, I have always clearly stated that our mission is best explained by the 3 R's. That is, review, research, and recommend. Our committee receives copies of the budget request only after an initial review by the town manager. We started our work this year on April the 8th. It is a lengthy process. After our review, we determine if we need more information from the various departments. Our research includes scheduling meetings with department heads to better understand their programs and requests. We may also contact state agencies or other communities for more factual information. We are fully aware that the town manager is responsible for preparing the town's operating budget. There is no one on this committee that needs a lesson on what the charter stipulates. The Financial Oversight Committee reviews the town manager's proposed budget and recommends acceptance or amendments of budget items. The Town Council reviews the town manager's proposal and the Financial Oversight Committee's recommendations. Only after that does the Town Council vote on the town's operating budget. The pandemic has caused town buildings to be closed, revenues are down, the state's budget is delayed, and as a result, so is ours. Every town department has been affected, and yet they continue to do their jobs. They certainly deserve praise, not criticism. It is totally unacceptable and unprofessional for members of any other town committee to make public statements containing innuendos that another committee is overstepping its charge from the town council, that its integrity should be questioned, or whether it is in compliance with the town charter. Our work this year has been a demanding challenge, and it won't be done until the state sets its budget and advises the town on local aid. We've met in a spirit of cooperation with town departments and with a commitment to fiscal responsibility for all departments, and most importantly, the taxpayers of our town. Our recommendations are based on what the town and ultimately the taxpayers can afford. In working on the town's business, we'd appreciate working in a more cooperative and respectful environment. That is my statement. And now we'll proceed to the agenda. The second item on the agenda is the approval of the June 24th meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look those over?
I move to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those that approve, go for a vote. Tom?
Yes.
Yes.
Jim? Yes. Mike?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, that being done. We have a little change in our agenda. I think our new finance director is going to walk us through the, you have a copy of this, Mike? I know you came in a little later. Steve Lonigan, our new finance director, is going to walk us through
One change.
the draft of the town manager's annual budget.
Thank you. The biggest change that came through is in the debt service. And upon reviewing it and going through it the past few days, my staff and I came up and we found that there was actually a saving of roughly $97,000 to the good. Largely due, it was just a number that was incorrect, and going through line by line, we tied it out and figured it out and verified it with Hilltop Securities, who's our financial advisor. And we were comfortable with this number, so it brought down the actual debt service from 3.1 million roughly to 3.0 million. So it was a good day on that day, and I think everything else has pretty much stayed the way that you guys have done a great job of working it out.
What page would that be on, Steve?
In 7K. I have one that's not.
No, I'm sorry, 7J.
7J. 7J, if you look at the one you handed out, Chair, it's your page 9 is where it
Okay.
changed, and the number that changed would be the general fund interest.
Okay,
Second line up from the bottom.
yes, I see that.
And it-
What page?
So I'm on 7K of the
No,
handout.
7J.
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 J, all right.
The line item is general fund interest.
That's 751? Is that what you're talking about?
No, the line I'm looking at is in the handout that we just gave you today would be 433,876.06.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, line 751. I'm still learning the codes. I apologize. Yes, 751. And it was originally, I think you originally had it at 531,202.75.
Excellent.
Good. We'll take any monies you can find.
Otherwise, the only change in the draft from what we've talked about over the weeks is the school department amount.
Yes.
Off by that.
Yes,
My budget is $613 higher for schools than
Yes.
committee's recommendation was.
There was just a little, in the budget, you're absolutely correct, that there was a minor difference in the transfers. You must have updated that, because there was a $3,600 change in transfers.
Did we talk about that? I thought in the emails that we had back and forth with you and Jim and me where we were trying to nail down that 3,600, but we will before too much more time goes by.
you're making the correction on your sheet, Jim?
Yeah, I'm just making a
Yeah.
note, yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
Carol. Okay, so you were in sync with the capital requests.
Well,
Yeah,
the
just looking here,
capital
so
piece that's
adjust
attached to
it.
this budget handout this morning reflects the recommendations of the committee
Yes,
to that 1,015,000 and with the itemization.
093, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we know, on the two items that are being bonded, do we know what the cost of that bonding is going to be and what the debt service is going to be on that? Has Don come up with numbers? I think we had a 5-month number.
Don had given us projections while we were on the capital planning, while the capital planning committee was meeting.
Yeah,
So that's what we used
Yeah.
for that's what's in there. The debt service for those two bonded projects, the projected debt service for FY21, that's what's in the $1,015,000.
It's
Unless you
included, yes.
reviewed it and it
Yep.
needs to change or.
No,
Included.
On page 9, Chris?
Yes, that's
if you
where
want-
I'm at.
Okay, so on, that's the first page of the capital budget. The third item down is the high school feasibility study. The $121,667
Yeah,
is 5 months of the debt service
okay,
on the potential bond of that 1,260,000. And then a little further down, MS steam pipe replacement, phase
Yes.
2. The 5480 is 11 months of debt service on that bond. Those were the
Okay.
numbers given to us by the treasurer as anticipated costs for those
Okay.
two projects.
all right, gotcha. All right, so those are the only changes.
The only thing we don't show, at least on mine, I haven't looked at yours yet, was, and I'm not sure we necessarily have to, but in the summary I had done, I don't have the debt service for the enterprise fund projects. I just have the total
Yeah.
project amount, but I'm not sure we've ever given that in the past. So one option would be just to eliminate that column for those projects, or,
Well,
just a substitute.
I think that because of the current debt that those enterprise funds are carrying, that we probably should know, because we don't have from Bruce, at least this committee doesn't have it yet, the projected revenues that he's going to have to support that.
So I noticed in the handout, the most recent one, you have sheets for each of the enterprise funds
Right.
with a budget for FY '21.
Correct.
So would the debt service, the projected debt service for the projects being recommended for FY '21, would that be in that FY '21 budget for these funds?
That's my understanding of how it was calculated.
Yeah.
Did Don discuss that with you?
Not in depth, but what we can do is we can look into it and give you.
Yeah,
send you
because
an email on it.
I wasn't sure, for instance, like the LCAT Enterprise Fund, it has an area for debt service, which was 18,250 for FY '20, and 16,327 for FY '21, which I don't know that we approved anything to be borrowed, so that wouldn't go up. So, if you've already calculated the number, then we'll just take yours and
Yeah.
stick them.
Well, we'll get a breakdown and I'll
right,
email it out to
sure.
you, to this committee.
Okay. Well, you all received the packet, the draft that Jim prepared for us on what we've gone through. And I asked everybody to kind of look at it. I know Mike hasn't had a chance yet. That's what happens when you get into that business. So if you have looked at it, I'd like to have comments. If you think the presentation is what you expected, is pretty much formatted on last year. I'll let you take over, Jim.
Yeah, although I would say now that the town manager is presenting their budget, we may want to add a column that similar to what we had last year, where there's the FY '20 budget, and then the FY '21 town manager budget, and then our recommendation, which in almost all instances are going to reflect the same thing.
Yeah.
But because I think we're making recommendations regarding the town manager's budget to the
Yes.
town council. So I don't think we kind of understood that fully, when we had last met.
Yeah.
But my suggestion would be maybe we add a column and treat it as our recommendations against the town manager's budget, which would pretty much mirror in all respects, but
Yes.
technically that's what we're doing. We're not commenting on the
Yes.
budget per se.
Because we worked collaboratively this year,
Yes,
it being a very unusual year
Yep.
with COVID and furloughs, and loss of revenue that we've been trying to track through the town collector. Yeah, so you're talking about the general fund uses, adding that other column.
General fund sources, general fund uses, so that you can see the 20 budget, the town manager budget for 21, and then the financial oversight committee's recommendations.
Yeah. That would basically eliminate the need for notes in that further right-hand column, don't you think?
I think in like page 1 and page 2, there's really no notes per se, although
Right. It
I'm
just
not even
starts at
sure
4.
we had included, one of the questions, I'm not sure we had included page 2 in our presentation last year. Did you recall?
No, we didn't, because that actually is part of the tax recap. That's page 3 of the recap.
Yeah. So I mean, unless it would just, more detail to go through, but.
Yeah,
So we could potentially eliminate this sheet. It's just a backup as to
do you use?
what got to the 4415.
Yeah, are you using the local receipts in your final determination?
Well, the 4415 on this page 2 tracks right up to, to the local receipts of 4415 on page 1. It just
Yeah,
details what they're made up of.
okay,
So we use it in kind of general subcategories on page 1. And since the spreadsheet we had from Olga and Sarah, previously,
yeah,
that was part of it. But
Yeah.
I would suggest maybe it's not necessary to.
yeah. I think we can eliminate that.
Yeah.
Which page again, 3?
Page 2.
Oh, 2, okay.
Yeah, that's the local receipts, and it's actually, it mirrors the page 3 of the recap when the tax rate recapitulation is put
Yes,
together.
got it.
Yeah, I think we could eliminate that as long as we're aware of the total in receipts.
So then page
Does that-
3, oops, sorry.
Yeah, I'm wondering, perhaps page 2 is going to need more work, and that would fall to Steve and his department, as far as the recurring and the non-recurring, to verify that and see, because it's within your purview to determine what that is, and if the number changes, just advise us of that,
Okay.
if you would.
Yep.
But I'll assume we won't include that as part of our
Exactly,
presentation.
yeah. Does anybody have a dissenting opinion on that? Okay,
And then I think we're kind of mirroring what Olga had and what we were using as a working document,
Yeah. Yes.
earlier this year.
yes,
And pretty much mirroring, I think that's a lot of the format that Mary used for her budget. So page 3, really now we just summarize the sources and we add the summary of the uses.
right,
So that'll need a little bit of changing because we got good news on the debt service and
yeah,
there was a 3,600 difference, so we'll just put those in line with those changes. But this is kind of the basic summary of where we are. And then the next step is the town department budgets. So again, for us, there was a bunch of notes done originally, I think perhaps when the budgets were assembled. And we, for a lot of our working spreadsheets, that had been kind of truncated, so we just dealt with the numbers.
yes,
So I had opened it up again to see whether those, need to be updated, reviewed, or, clean up the comments or the notes
Yeah.
to make sure they're correct. I'm not sure, Mary, do you have that on your budget?
Do now.
You do now, okay. All right.
So I have comments very similar to,
Okay.
well, at least in substance to what you have on your,
So, and again, it may be if we're technically looking at that as commenting or recommending based on the town manager's budget, and she has those comments in hers,
Yeah,
it may be that we really don't need to
True.
include those in ours.
yeah.
Uh,
I think what we need to do then, individually outside of the meeting, is to look at the comments, and, because I know some of these that are in currently are carryovers and some are
Yeah.
not. So if we can replace them, we can just negate all of them.
Right. So, unless anyone has an objection, if it makes sense, maybe we just assume that the comments came when the town manager's budget was presented, and we're just recommending on that. And if we recommend something differently than the town manager, then we would need to add comments.
Yeah, okay.
And so that really takes us through all the departments.
Well, it takes us through page 6.
Yeah, well, and then also, this is the department uses and the other general fund uses, which really takes us through to page 10.
Yeah, I think on 9, what's of crucial importance is that we really can't afford to put anything into stabilization or OPEB this year.
Right.
And last year, at the end of the fiscal year, we were able to put $2 million in there. And we don't have any appropriation of the stabilization fund, so
Yeah.
we're,
And as we get to the last page, you can definitely see the impact of that on our reserves to operating expenses. But, so again, I think we'll just change, because I'm assuming we're all in agreement with the debt service change, so.
yes. I hate to think that the debt service would be greater than what we have in unrestricted emergency money. That's, I know that they okay the OPEB as part of our reserves, even though it's restricted and we can't really use it for anything.
The next one was just, I had tried to reorder Ryan's spreadsheet so that it just had the general fund recommended projects and a subtotal for that. And then, the enterprise funds to show which ones we recommended, which ones we didn't. So at the end of it is all the listing of ones that were deferred, which
Yeah.
is obviously a fairly long list. And I thought it made sense to put the total projects and the FY21 impact, because the total projects, I think, is what we would compare in terms of how much are we spending on capital against the size of our budget.
Yeah.
Just versus the debt services is something different. And that's how much do we have to spend next year on
Right.
those things.
but yesterday Steve made it, if I may, Chris,
Yeah.
Steve
Certainly.
made a very good point about, we haven't bonded the 20 approved projects yet. And maybe the focus of and with your help, perhaps this committee going forward, maybe our capital plan has to be, figure out what's been approved already and how we're gonna finance it and what it's really gonna cost, and defer all the projects that can reasonably be deferred, because we've just got a lot of stuff in queue.
Yes, we do.
And it obviously impacts the tax rate when we're building it into the general fund expenditures.
I know in past times, sometimes the approved projects, we would wait until we kind of accumulated
Right.
a passel of them, so that it made more sense to package them all together, even though they might have different amortizations on components, but then you'd amortize the legal expense and the bonding expense.
Yeah.
So, but you would think we would still at least be paying short-term interest on that if the project had been going forward and spending money, but certainly it makes sense to kind of review that.
Well, we'd like to kind of corral the issue, so to speak, and figure out what's out there and when we can afford to bond for it, and if we should put several projects together, but it's another item that came up
Yeah.
during our discussion.
Sure.
That's-
So I can also send you that long-term debt projection that Dawn had provided us that
Mhm.
sends us out to the end of the debt.
Yeah.
I did have a chance, based on her feedback in terms of what projects were what projects, to kind of break that up between general fund, debt service, and then the enterprise fund debt service. So we can kind of see with the general fund, which is mostly what we want to see, what kind of capacity are we going to start building up, and when does it come in? I'd be happy to.
Absolutely, I appreciate that.
So I don't know if you want to use this format for capital, and I sent a copy to Ryan, but only yesterday, to see
Yeah.
whether he had any suggestions or issues. Or I noticed Mary used the format that, in essence, we were familiar with
Yeah.
from last year. What it does do is does a better job of explaining what the projects are.
That's what I liked about it.
So that from a presentation for the purposes of perhaps the town council, this might be a good format to
Yes.
use, because it's easy to see what it is. Whereas ours was mainly geared at evaluating it, categorizing it, prioritizing it,
Right.
and evaluating it. So I
Yeah.
just didn't have this format, and since we were using this one, I said, okay, I'm not gonna.
Last minute.
Well, since
Yeah.
Mary has it in hers, we can stay with what you have, because it was much more
Oh.
understandable to me than, once I saw it in landscape,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So
Does anybody else feel that way?
As long as it's explained in one of the presentations for the description or the notes of the project and the need for the project at this time,
Yeah,
I
that's,
don't care where it shows up.
yeah. Well, then, if that's the case, for the need for the project would show up more in the format that Mary used, which was similar to our old format.
Yeah. I think that's where, in the past, if I may,
Certainly.
the public's comments have always come during the presentation from the town manager, and then after the council approves or accepts, additional questions sometimes follow.
Yes.
But the notes are important for the public to understand why the decisions were made and the reasons why.
Yeah.
There is also a process that we've used the last couple of years, and this is just a note from Mary, that those projects that have increased, or those line items that have increased 5% and more than $5,000, were always given notes to and explained.
The capital projects that went up that?
All line items. So if someone's budget increased by more than 5% and more than $5,000, so the smaller amounts,
We're
sometimes
nowhere
change.
close to that problem this year.
Yeah.
We got everybody going down 5%.
Well, that's
Yeah.
good, it's good, but if you
Yeah,
look
no, I
through
get your
the
point.
budgets, there are some that are above the 5% and above 5,000.
Right,
It'd be good to have an explanation of those.
yeah, well,
Those are the ones that usually get flagged.
sure, no, I would expect that that would be the case. I liked Ryan's format for our capital committee because it helps when you're evaluating the projects.
Yes.
Because we can categorize the
Prioritize.
area that they contribute to the town's well-being the most, right? I mean, we
Yes.
had lots of good discussions about that. So, but for purposes of the budget presentation, if we kept the format the same, it gives me the opportunity to put my comments in, and then I'm happy to share this with anybody, that
Yeah.
certainly all the council could have a copy. Or if we had a narrative, which I suppose in my mind, I'm gonna have a narrative ready for the capital presentation as well, because I sat on that committee too. But
Yeah.
this is very helpful in explaining things.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that's probably more necessary than what the
Yep.
what the capital
Sure.
committee prioritized.
use this format for.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep, fine.
Yeah.
And Chris, if I may, as well, the enterprise funds, we've received numbers on those, and some of the numbers have changed, and I think that's a moving target as
It
funds come in.
changes every day.
Right, it changes. It'd be great to have an updated balance in those accounts, specifically the stormwater, which is the newest account. Before we
that in
expend,
there,
as
too?
Chris was talking about earlier,
Yeah.
before we have any debt service out of that account, it'd be nice to know what the balance in the account is.
I think it's $235,000, something like that, right now.
Yeah, that was the amount they wanted.
Oh, that's for the sweeper.
Yeah.
235.
So, and that's the reason why, that was just one of the things that came up in discussions, is we don't want to extend or expend that whole account the first year out.
Right.
It's like you save a dime, but you're gonna spend 11 cents, and it's like, why? Wait until you get 20 cents and then spend 11 cents.
Well, unfortunately, Mr. Fenny's on vacation, so I can't get his input to you today. He'll be back Monday.
Oh, good.
But he expressed great confidence in the capital committee that he had sufficient funds in these accounts to fund all the projects that, so unless something's changed from
Yeah, I would echo, that's my understanding in terms of Bruce's,
Yeah.
where Bruce's was. He had indicated he had gotten a projection of debt service for each of the projects from Dawn some time ago.
Yes.
So, I think the question would be, did things change enough to make it a material difference in terms of projection? But he had indicated he had used those and put it in his budget. I'm just not sure, are the budgets that you've got in yours, are they reflective of what Bruce, is they reflective of Bruce's budgets for those?
Yes, because
Okay.
they spoke with Tom Christensen, who's more than adequately filling in for Bruce while he's away. And Tom spent time yesterday with Steve and Olga and Don going through the
Right.
enterprise fund balances and projected increases and so forth. So I'd be surprised if there was a material change, but
Yeah.
I'll leave that to Bruce's explanation.
Yeah. I have a kind of a technical question about, are the books going to be closed as of June 30th for fiscal '20? Because I know we're into that 1/12 budget. So if the books are closed, is there going to be a certification of the free cash, the enterprise fund balances and so forth?
That will be part of our process to make
Yeah.
sure that we do that, and it's good accounting practice to do that required. And, but a time frame right now, I'm not sure what the time frame would be right now, but we're planning on doing it as soon as possible.
Yeah, I was wondering if the governor's,
There's been no
if
news.
it extended it, if you
No,
heard anything from the Bureau of
unfortunately.
Accounts that,
The last thing I've read from the Bureau of Accounts is, we'll let you know, kind of
Oh.
thing. Honestly, I think this being so new to everybody,
yeah,
they're trying to figure out what's agreeable for and helpful to the municipalities, rather than just saying it's a hard deadline, this, that, and the other thing.
yeah.
And with the change of the due date to the tax and everything went into flux the minute that
Oh, I
happened.
know it.
I think we'll target June 30th because
Yeah.
that would be my desire anyway. And then we know we can use our free cash as certified as of last
Yeah.
July 1, which is the 1.1 million something,
Right.
if necessary.
Yes,
And the other issue that I guess will have to come before the council, or maybe with your advice too, is I suspect, I don't know the number yet, but I think we're going to have a significant turnback from fiscal '20 for departments that have saved money since March.
okay,
All of them have done a lot of cost cutting, so to speak, and we've had our furloughs in effect.
Yes.
So all that money that was budgeted for '20 could go into the stabilization fund,
exactly.
as opposed to going into, flowing over into free cash. Then we'd have to wait to have that certified till whenever that happens.
Right.
And then, of course, we're not making a contribution this year to stabilization, but maybe we can backfill, go in the back door by turning this money
It's a
over,
contribution of sorts.
Yes,
and then use it, if necessary, to support our budget as the months go by.
yeah,
Um,
okay. Well,
So
that's as much
there's a lot of,
information as you have at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, every day it changes, and we're just trying to be creative in the way we can keep things
You've
going.
been creative through the whole process, Mary.
Well, excuse me, Chris, to that point too, these budgets that we're going to be presenting, both the town managers and the finance committee, are proposed budgets.
Yes,
They're not going to be finalized until we know how much money we're taking in from the state's accounts.
I
And
see.
from our personal revenues.
Right.
And so you can't set a budget until you know how much money you have.
Well,
That's
the
right.
only thing I would say to that, Tom, is we've always had to do that, because when we would present a budget in May to town meeting, we'd be basing it on the estimated budgets. The legislature would not have passed it by then, so
Right.
we always have, we would finalize and the town would vote on its budget. And then if it was, if the legislature voted, let's say, state aid substantially different,
With amendments.
we would have to come back and vote an adjustment. But we've always voted a budget period, knowing that it could have to change since all the variables aren't pinned down. And of course, now it might be even later before
Yeah.
we know those variables.
I think the name of it is provisional budget.
Yeah.
Because it's an interim budget until the state numbers are in. And we don't know what they're gonna do. I thought they were supposed to be voting on Chapter 90 a couple weeks ago, but I haven't heard anything about Chapter 90 monies. I think they've set that aside, same for the Chapter 70, and same for the unrestricted local aid. So until we know those numbers, nothing can really be finalized.
And I think it would be more beneficial if we were out of that 1/12.
Yeah.
Sooner than later.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that's
yeah.
just gonna
Because I think it
complicate
creates
things.
counting
Yeah.
problems down the road, and for the recap and
Yeah.
lots of other issues that we could perhaps avoid if we had an adopted provisional budget.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
it's an approved budget
Approved
with the
budget.
understanding that it is provisional.
Yeah, it's-
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
Subject to change.
Yeah.
A lot of caveats.
I had one question on expenses, payroll taxes.
Yeah.
I know we did a number of things from the budget from when, the first packet was submitted. Does that get recalculated? Do we recalculate that based on what our proposed salaries are, or?
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
don't
wondering
think we
whether
did
that
that.
number
The payroll
moves
number.
That's,
and potentially moves in our favor.
Right, that's a good point, we'll do that. We did not do
We'll update
that.
it.
Yeah, that's on page 8 of our copy. And I think it's something that had been plugged in, that number, the 534,500, and the increase was only 6,400. So it says if salaries increase, so will the
Right.
payroll taxes. So
It's on our 7J, Steve.
I have a feeling that workers' comp and health and life are pretty much, those were the numbers.
Yeah, through the chair, my question is, we've been discussing the workers' comp and the life and health, and our discussions were based on such a large increase that was being
Yeah.
provided to us by our carriers. And I know it was bad timing, but is there any opportunity, or have we had any discussions with those, our insurers, to negotiate these prices? and
Well, we
come-
don't have an opportunity to negotiate for fiscal '21, but I have 2 subcommittees in place to review the liability insurance as well as the Scantic Valley
Yeah.
health insurance, so that going forward, we can see if there are options.
Yeah.
Steve and I were just talking the other day about whether we should look into the GIC, which is the Commonwealth's insurer, for more options for lower premiums, but, I mean, we're already into fiscal '21 and the rates are set, so.
Yes.
I
Right.
have met with the Maya people, they're recommended by Mass Municipal Organization, and they do have sort of the lock on the market, but I have met already with somebody who works for another company and sells the same types of insurance to municipalities, so. As I said, we have a subcommittee set up, I don't think they've met yet, but that's because
Good.
of the obvious. But we will, once the dust settles a little bit, and we can actually sit down and think about things calmly and thoroughly, to try to figure out our strategy, to make things better, and to save some money where possible, we'll certainly do that. It's on the to-do list.
Yeah, no, great, because I mean, when you look at those
No,
numbers.
you've mentioned it before, and
Yeah,
you're quite
yeah.
right, those are big numbers.
Yeah, we're talking a little over $1 million.
Yeah.
Just in those accounts. And that's, I'd hate to be held hostage by an insurer. There ought to be an opportunity for us to shop.
Well, we can shop, but we still have labor negotiations, because the best way to cut those costs is to change the percentage that the town contributes, and it's 70-30 on most of our employees, so, you know,
Yeah.
I don't see any union agreeing with me that that should go 50-50 or any other percentage. So, but the premiums themselves, we're looking into trying to avoid penalties under the Affordable Care Act, because some of our staff in town is minimum wage or just a tad above. And they don't have affordable premiums on some of the programs that are offered through Scantic, so we're always walking a tightrope as to whether or not we're gonna get hit with penalties in that regard. So it's a very delicate issue. It's a benefit we certainly wanna continue to afford our employees, but we need to afford it for our employees, so.
Now that we have, and this is probably a question for Mary too, now that we have HR, we have a director of finance in place, who's going to be accountable, responsible for tracking our workers' comp claims, so we know what our experience rates have been and how we can improve on those?
Well, that's all going to come through the subcommittee, first of all.
Mhm.
DPW is the primary source of our comp claims. That's where most of the injuries occur. I think the increase that you're seeing here in this year's budget, though, I'm told anyway, was from the bus drivers. There were a lot of bus incidents with kids or drivers or auto accidents or something, and it's based on the prior 3 years' experience rate. So, you know, I don't know. I don't know that I want to put that on HR. I don't know for sure if I want to put it on Steve, but we'll put it somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at least the
And
bus situation
they
will go
offer
away.
seminars. They'll come into your town offices and give you updated trainings and whatnot. And so, I mean, HR is all over that, and we try to take advantage of those opportunities as much as possible. But again, I think that's another good example of how we know we need to do these things, and we'd like to do them yesterday, but we just haven't had the opportunity to think them through. And I don't want to do anything by rushing headlong into it. I like to think things through and figure out if we've got the resources that we need and the personnel that we need to address something appropriately and completely before we just go off sort of half-cocked, so to speak.
Sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm digressing off your agenda, I
Yeah.
apologize.
Jim?
So before we move off the capital recommendations pages,
Yeah.
I assume, well, I'm thinking I would still add a column so that it shows the total project amount and the FY '21
Cost.
impact.
Yeah.
And then the same as we discussed doing with the previous pages, have the town manager's budget and have our recommendations, just so it's consistent
Yeah.
with how we approach it.
That sounds fine,
Well,
John.
hopefully it won't be too busy.
Yeah.
So, so that brings us to the last page that I had put in a packet, which is page 13, I believe.
Yeah.
Which Diane was kind enough to correct for me.
Yeah.
And Diane, did you make copies?
Yes, and I think I passed them out.
Yeah.
Did you need one?
Everybody?
Hopefully I've got the same one as you do.
Yes, I did make some.
Yeah, that's where my
51 cents
question
is the
will
key.
lie, because I have 3 of those sheets right here right now. And I believe 2 are the same, so maybe didn't,
Anybody needs one?
somebody didn't get a copy.
I have one.
If I'm looking at bottom line on 2 are the same. On all 3 of them, the reserve balance analysis are all the same.
Yes, it was really,
Oh, you got
I
all
had
the extras
incorrect
What's that?
numbers
You
for
got
the
all the extra
historical,
sheets.
for the FY '20.
Yeah.
So it made for a incorrect comparison against
Would somebody
So-
like an extra one here that I do have? Does anyone need one?
I'm
So
gonna
the one
assume
that
that,
Diane brought today,
The same as what I
Is-
gave you.
right, is the correct one.
yes, yes, and basically what it does is correct the FY20 information, so that the comparison against FY21 is correct. But in any event, I did change it to show what the assumptions were made to take us from our previous valuation to what we're using for a valuation for FY21. So it shows the 500,000 growth, and then our assumption that it's gonna go up 1%. So that's what gets us to that 2,100,000,100,000. So this might change a little bit, not the capacity won't change. The excess may change a little bit because we had a little bit of a difference. So that'll make a little bit of difference in the projected mill rate, which is 21.35, which would be a 51, in this instance, a 51-cent increase, or basically 2.5% up from last year.
I would call everybody's attention to the remaining reserves that are unrestricted, and they're at 4.7%.
So that's the second half of the page.
Yeah,
And the free cash is the 1,688. We sounds like we used $500,000. So our effective, I'm calling it effective free cash,
Yeah.
is 1,000,001. The stabilization balance I've got is 2,000,009. So the total reserves, and why is that 2,000,009 when the stabilization fund balance is 2,000,009?
yeah, it should be higher.
So actually, that's going to be better. I don't know what I did there, but it's not correct. It should be 3 million something. Well, that's good.
The 2,990 should be higher.
Because you're adding a free cash?
Who proofread this thing?
It should be added together.
Right.
So it should be almost 4 million.
I looked at the top.
Yeah, if that's higher, it's so much the better, because that brings
Yeah.
us into that realm of 5 to 10%.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
It looks like
absolutely.
it should be 4,171,848.
You're absolutely correct, Mary.
Say that number again, please.
4,171,848.
Yep. So if we
Oh, I
do
feel
that
better.
against our 63, actually, we'll look right in the ballpark, 6.5.
Oh, even better.
Okay.
Boy, that was a rookie error.
There's no fault there, Jim.
No.
So that'll flow through.
That'll work there.
That'll flow
Much
through
better.
in terms of the OPEB. I mean, Sarah had indicated that that's included as part of the overall reserves, but
Yes.
so I include it there, but I think, the free cash and the stabilization, I kind of look at as our really unrestricted.
Yeah, our rainy
Reserves.
day fund.
Yeah.
Could you repeat the percentage, please? It was
6.5%.
6.5%.
Okay, thanks.
So I'll redo this bottom of it.
Okay. All right, so the committee is good with the format that's going to be
Yes.
used with the change on the capital project presentation? Yeah, I think that'd be good. More work for you, Jim.
And if you come across changes with the payroll tax or whatever,
We'll
just,
definitely check in the payroll tax, but then Steve, you'll send Jim the,
Enterprise,
please,
the enterprise one.
the enterprise stuff. And when we adjust the debt service amount, that'll be
yeah, great.
a good adjustment also.
That's good. Any old business? Any other old business? Any new business? That being said, this is a short meeting for a Friday morning. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.